Also, I was just given some huge news by Kit Daniels, and then I forgot to bring it in here, so maybe he can bring that back into me. Now, before I get into all this news, it's really important to see the big picture. And I know they've taught people, hearing all these political parties around the world and all these different ideas and all these different books and all these different cultures and all these different futurists and all these different people, telling you how the world really works or giving you their perspective. Well, the reason I know how the world works, quite frankly, better than anybody who isn't on the inside of the power structure at the highest levels, is because I've made it my business to study history in a wide spectrum. I've also had a lot of life experience. And for 21 years, I've been immersed on air covering the globalist, forcing myself to stay totally focused on this information. So you do become informed doing that and interviewing thousands of top experts, in every field. And reading hundreds of publications and books written by the technocrats themselves, reading congressional studies, reading declassified memos like Northwood's and countless others. And I can tell you unequivocally, we are entering a managed, command and control, global private world government designed to make humans obsolete and designed to phase out the vast majority of the world population. And there are some arguments for that. They make them very compellingly. But the truth is, they just like to kill people and control people, and then they do everything they can to actually not let people industrialize and to overpopulate, so then they have the excuse to kill even more people. And that's in the Royal Commission Report 49. And see, there's all these worldviews and how people want the world to work and competing strategies and economies, and there are different forces in the world. But the dominant force on this planet, outside of God, and God's given the world over to the God of this world, whether you believe in that or not, the archetype's there, it's real. The God of this world comes to kill, steal, and destroy. It wants to deceive you. It wants to beguile you. It wants to make you dependent and enslave you. The devil is a slave master who traffics in the souls of men and women, who steals dreams. That's why I can't stand L.A., why I physically get sick there since I was a kid when I would travel there and nowhere else. It's not the smog, because I get sick flying in at 10,000 feet. And I would always notice it, and finally, by the time I was 30 years old, I was like, I'm noticing I'm getting sick before I land. And I don't get into, mumbo jumbo. I mean, I physically, and everybody else talks about it, an emptiness. I mean, I can be in some little fishing village in Mexico with people running around doing stuff, and it feels so alive, so good. Even if there's a poverty there and might even be some dark overtones, there's so much light, it's beautiful. Or I can be, somewhere in a third world country in Eastern Europe, but there's humanity there. It's the falseness that it's purely a modern construct, and it sucks in millions of people who believe that they're going to have their dreams fulfilled. It steals their dreams, steals the light out of their eyes, steals their soul. Los Angeles is probably the most satanic place in the world. And I've talked to well-traveled folks that agree with me. They say they've been everywhere. From Tokyo to Calcutta, from Peking to Beijing to Durban, from Cairo to London, from Paris to Berlin, from Rio de Janeiro to Mexico City, from Montreal to Tel Aviv. There's nothing more evil. And it's because there's the anguish and the pain of the people captured in the lie, captured having their souls sucked out. Now, you get near the city of London, within London, tax exempt, one of the oldest command bases in the world after the Vatican, it's ice cold, and you feel the presence scanning you. Physically with all the high-tech gadgetry and spiritually. Rome is full of rage and power and passion and war and beauty, and is a mix. New York is bustling and stinks, but it has good feelings and bad. Same with London, but not Los Angeles. And if you want to know what the world's going to be like, it's basically one giant Los Angeles. One giant soul-sucking event forcing you into artificial reality, show that reality's so horrible you want the artificial reality. And so in that artificial reality, you will basically allow your psyche to be overwritten. I remember 6 years ago, it was in MIT publications that they were putting brain chips in, quote, depressed troops. Then I ran into troops that volunteered with PTSD to be brain chipped. Then a few years ago, I actually saw it in mainstream publications that the brain chipping was beginning. I would cover it. They'd say, oh, he's crazy. He says there's brain chips. Here's a Daily Mail article, where they're telling you about something that's already going on in humans, but they're saying it's in animals to get you ready. U.S. military successfully installs brain modems in animals. And I'm going to get into that. Part of a project to develop, quote, cyborg soldiers who use the cerebral implants to control machines. That's from the Pentagon. Now, see, my cousin who's out of the Army now and was in special operations, Africa, the Middle East, Eastern Europe, the Caribbean, Central America, South America. Now that he's out, he's told me a few stories. Stuff like he's in the Dominican Republic. He pulls up in his rent car with the other officer he's with. Communists are following. They jump out. They try to machine gun the car. The guards at the hotel who look like they're bellhops, perfectly shoot both the communists who are Haitian, kill them, and then they roll the car, splash water before the next car rolls in. Just stories like that. He goes, man, you have no idea how crazy it is. And I'll never forget, he never really told me much after this because this was about 10 years ago. I told the story on air. He goes, no, we were at Sam Houston State University for an officers meeting. There are about 200 officers in there. And they call us in and they go, all right, you in the next year are going to be getting chips, subdermal, that track where you go in case you get kidnapped or whatever. And then we're going to roll out for volunteers in the future, even more in-depth chipping. And we're sitting there and he goes, what you're talking about is true. Then he told him about the meeting and all that. And they didn't tell him it was a secret meeting or classified. Man, he got called in and chewed out. And then his dad, who was also in special operations, died a few years ago. He was the guy that was in the really wild stuff here in the U.S. I was over at his house because they live on the ranch next door to ours. He's like, do me a favor and don't ever talk about stuff he tells you again. Because he got brought up, before the man and almost didn't get his last promotion because of that. Talking about that microchip stuff. And I went, well, he didn't tell me not to talk about it. He goes, whatever he tells you, don't tell anybody about it. You're lucky you're not dead. Like, I can't believe you're not dead. And your mother and father love you. I'm sorry, but you just need to shut up. And see, that's what I've grown up around. The general public lives in some fantasy land. You want me to watch NFL football while stuff like this is going on? And they're getting ready to brain chip the general military. First, they'll make it elite with the Navy SEALs and the Delta Force people. And then it's going to move on. And it's going to be those that have brain damage and stuff where it actually helps them. But here's the big secret. Everything the globalists do has a Trojan horse, whether it's GMO food or an iPhone or a droid or an appliance or an alarm system or anything cultural they do, it's for another reason. It's much more sophisticated than something like the Terminator from the 1980s, but we ought to take a line from that where the Special Forces guys come back in time. He's telling the cops and everybody, look, man, he's coming. He won't stop. He doesn't care if it's a building full of police. He wants to kill you. That's his mission. That's what he's going to do. You can't reason with it. You can't talk with it. You can't play games with it. The governing system of the world is eugenics and a technocracy to come in and wipe us out. Then the elite believe they're going to merge with machines and be gods. Now, I told you this 18 years ago, but now it's well known.
Thousands of years ago, there was a basic form of chivalry. Our ancestors would hear the drums of war, giving the warriors of the tribe a chance to organize and prepare a defense. 60 years ago, when foreign air forces were approaching filled with bombs, they had drums of their own air raid sirens. But in the 21st century, there are silent weapons for quiet war. Pathogens added to the food and water, and to the lining of plastics that destroy our vitality, turn off our hormones, and accelerate our journey towards death. I personally counter this onslaught with Anthroplex. Anthroplex is designed with known organic concentrated herbs to create the basic foundation to normal metabolic activity inside the human body. Discover why Anthroplex is turning so many heads today. It's time for us to take our bodies back into our own hands, and it starts at InfoWarsLife.com with Anthroplex.